Hey folks, today we're taking a look at a Kickstarter called Realm of Heroes. Now, Realm of Heroes is a game that takes place in a fantasy setting, but this is a different type of game. In this game, which can be played 2 to 4 players, and if the Kickstarter does well, 5 to 6, in which you are strategically trying to control area. The theme here is important as the fantasy theme, but it's more of a straight-up strategic game trying to move units around the board. Think of it a little bit as a kind of almost a version of Go, but with a fantasy theme on top of it and upgrading heroes to give them different powers. Let me show you how the game plays. Okay, as with all my previews, the components that you see here are not final component quality. They're just so we can give you an idea of what the game looks like. Now, you can set a game up for this Realm of Heroes. You can set one up randomly, or you can set it up according to multiple ways that the book shows you. There's different scenarios that you can set it up with. If you set it up randomly, you'll take a certain number of tiles that are made up of field, forest, and mountain tiles. You will shuffle those tiles, place them into this bag, and put them into a grid depending on the number of players. This is a 4-player game that you see here. We have red, yellow, green, and blue. There are also black and white pieces that can be added to the game to make a 5 or 6 player game, although that would be a larger grid. You then would place different number of tokens for each player in the bag and pull those out and place them on everything except for the mountains. Each player will then place their leader, and you can see here's a leader, has 2 different sides, so you can pick which leader you want, and they start with 1 tower. And then the game is going to progress. Now, an important thing to understand about the game is understand the territories. Territories is when you have 2 or more areas next to each other the same color. Right now, there's a very large red territory here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Green has a 3 territory here. Yellow doesn't even have any territories right now because there's no yellows next to each other. And blue only has this small territory placed right here. The goal of the game is to take out your opponent's leader. If you destroy your opponent's leaders, all the other ones, they're dead. Once your leader is gone, you're out of the game. Now, you're going to be doing the game through a series of turns. Each player is going to take a turn and follow through the different steps of that turn. The first part of a turn is a plague phase. When characters die, or sometimes through other means, plague tokens will be on the board, and the plague tokens that are in areas that you control will spread. Okay, then there's a support phase, and this is a big deal. As the game progresses, you're going to have different leaders. For example, here you have a peasant who has a strength of 2, but as the game progresses, that peasant may be upgraded to this warrior who's a 4, or maybe up to a ranger who's a 6. In fact, one of the most interesting things about the game is how these guys upgrade, and I'll talk about that in a second. However, you must support them. So these fields, there's different types of terrain here, fields, forests, and mountains. Each field can support a certain number. So, for example, here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's only 6 fields here in this red area, so it can support up to a 6 unit. If it does not, every single unit that you have is going to turn over and become diseased. So you need to make sure you can support your powerful units. The very, very powerful units are going to be harder to use because of the amount of support that they'll need on your turn. Then a player has reinforcement. Now, they can add a tower to the board, or they can upgrade a tower to a castle or to a wizard's tower, a wizard's keep. Both of them have different defensive abilities that they have. A tower is worth 2. When you go up to a castle, it's worth 6. A wizard keep is 4, but its defensive range can extend to other areas. Or you can add a new peasant onto the board, or you can upgrade a peasant. Now, when you upgrade, you're going to follow a different track. And the easiest way is to kind of show you here in the instruction manual. A peasant can become a healer, a warrior, or an apprentice. Each of these then can be upgraded. You can see here that the healer can become a druid or a warlock. The warrior can go to a knight or a ranger, and the apprentice can become a wizard or a sorcerer. So, if you go for the center track, you're just going for sheer power. Warrior becomes a 4, knight 8, super powerful, or to a ranger 6, who can go through forest and mountain tiles. The healer is only a 3, but they can get rid of plagues. And that's the advantage of the druid and the warlock. The warlock can even place plagues. Then we have the apprentice, who can convert adjacent tiles of lesser strength to yours color. And then that's what the warlock does. And then the sorcerer can essentially cancel out your opponent's buildings. So each of them has their different things. You can add one of these on your turn, or you can add a tower, or you can upgrade a tower, or you can upgrade one of these to another type as the game progresses. After you're done with that, then you can move these. Now when you move them, you can move them through your own color, adjacent colors, and adjacent can be diagonally anywhere you want. To move into an opponent's color, though, requires that the strength of the unit that you're moving in is greater than the strength of the strongest unit in that area, whether that's a building or a leader. And if you do so, then you will convert that to your color. If there's a unit that's there, you'll destroy that unit. If there's a tower that's there, you'll destroy that tower. And that's how you're trying to get to the point where you can corner your opponent's leaders and kill them. And again, the next person will take their turn, and turns will continue going on and on and on until one player has won the game by eliminating all the opponent's leaders. There you go, that's Realm of Heroes. And so games do not take that long, although the decisions you will make can be quite sharp. The game really doesn't have any randomness other than the initial setup, and you can even mitigate that by playing with one of the setups you want. The decisions in this game are basically, there are a few decisions, but they can be really tough ones. What am I going to add to the board? Am I going to go with buildings, which are easy and I don't need to support them, but they can't move and attack? Or am I going to build heroes, and if I do so, what am I going to do? Am I going to go for straight strength? Can I afford to support this person with the fields that I have? Or will I go for a weaker unit but has some cool special powers? Or, you know, and then how am I going to attack my opponent? How am I going to push him back in there? You can be doing really well, and then suddenly your support gets cut, your units get killed, and instantly everyone comes in and just carves up your territory like a butter knife. And so there's this back and forth feinting act, this I'm going for this territory, I'm going for this one. It's a game that very much supports attacking other players and getting their territory and capturing them, and has this feel as the different discs change color over the board, and you can be doing really well at one point, and then something differently at another point. The mountains and the forests are there because you can't, they don't provide any, they make your territory bigger, but they don't provide support. The ranger can move through them. Everyone else has to stop moving when they go into them. The mountains block most movement except the ranger. And so you say, oh, the ranger, he's a great guy to get, but he does cost 6, which makes him expensive to maintain and support. And maybe you're better off getting one of the other guys, maybe the guy who ignores buildings. And if someone else builds the guy who ignores buildings, all my buildings are moot, but now I can build stronger guys because the sorcerer's not that powerful. So there's this back and forth involved. Anyhow, if you're interested in kickstarting this project, in just a moment we'll show you a link to where you can back it. Realm of Heroes. Here it is.